Okay, people, it's March 2nd, 2023, wee hours of the morning. I'm trying to muster up the energy to get onto that provincial budget report up on YouTube with the province of British Columbia, Canada, because I said I was going to do it. The video itself is only 27 minutes long, but, I'm like, I want to do a video where I actually kind of get to go into my bedroom and grab a few glitter clothes and maybe a pair of earrings and put them on and get into my Alberta wheat and chickpeas and Great Northern beans and do a Green Acre style video as if I have a sense of humor. Okay. So in the meantime, I'm like, Judy, just get on with this video. You said you were going to do it in terms of that budget report, right? The provincial budget report. I'm like, it's like, I'm like, okay, just listen to this and just do it. But as I'm listening to this now, I don't know if you know this fella. His name is Stu Peters. He's been around for quite a while, right? I think he ended up getting booted off of YouTube right along with a whole lot of other people. Anyway, he's talking about Ukraine here and what's happening with the politics around it, and I'm like, this guy is so spot on. So before I start with the budget of British Columbia, Canada, the financial budget, I thought I'd just let you listen to this for a minute. Now I'm just randomly stopping it and we're just gonna pick up where he's going with it, okay? Just for a few minutes. Hold on.
War munitions, but you're buying something that you needed about as badly as you need a hole in the head. And now even Kevin McCarthy is pushing for the deaths of our boys, and sadly now girls, in our military if we don't send fighter jets and ammo and missiles to Ukraine to help protect this globalist shakedown racket. The motion to vacate the chair is not enough for Kevin McCarthy. No, Kevin McCarthy needs to be among the first tried at Nuremberg II military tribunals for assisting in the handing over of our sovereignty to the globalist banking cabal run largely by his Israeli paymasters. And speaking of sovereignty, the fake president, given to us largely by the fake Republican Party in those 5 key states of Georgia, Arizona, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan, represented appropriately enough by the color red for communism, Joe Biden is on the precipice of handing over the American sovereignty to the World Health Organization, a communist organization closely tied to the CCP and run by an open commie Director General Tedros, who openly works with communists around the globe.
Who is not a doctor of any sorts.
And even the neocons at Foreign Policy magazine, a project of the Council on Foreign Relations, some of the worst globalist neocons on the planet are opposed to Tedros remaining in power at the WHO. But Biden, controlled by Obama and the rest of the puppeteers, is giving them more power over the United States for future pandemics that they're already planning.
Okay, so we'll leave it there, and I'll just add in a link. You can see, what's the title? Wants U.S. troops slaughtered in Ukraine. Treasonous politicians waste tax dollars on. That's because they're trying to, I don't know, what is it called? Extortion? When you threaten somebody with something if they don't do it. He's threatening that if this guy in the Ukraine, right, who's a history of being an actor that's gay. He's a gay guy. Okay. Anyway, you know there's all these gay guys in power. Trudeau represents that, acts like that sometimes when it's convenient for himself to, I guess reach out to that voting bloc. I don't know. But he looks and acts gay, that's for sure. And this guy's gay. Who else is gay? There's somebody in the White House that wears dresses and has a mustache with lipstick on and high heels, and he's running around. I don't know what he's doing, but he's in a high position of something. Well, he's at the airport stealing luggage so he gets free clothes. Women's clothes, that is. As we have a little 11-year-olds now going in front of school board councils, pulling out books that they're getting from the library that has explicit lewd pornography literature, right? Reading it to them, saying this is what, this boy is 11, right? Saying this is what the librarian is encouraging him to read more by offering him more books. Anyway, okay. You can't compete against any of that, people. You know? A lot of these people need to go to jail, but our police aren't doing their jobs. Because it leads into trafficking children and other human beings and into other illegal activities that are in the underground economy, right? It's a perversion. Okay, so let me see. Let me find what I'm looking for. I'm kind of not up for this, but because it's you know, it's depressing, right? I've been there, done that. I used to be so enthused about being part of the solution when it came to provincial politics and trying to add on to positive initiatives that were, you know, supported by the government to one degree or another, or could be supported by the government to enhance whatever it is that you're trying to do on a community level, from district to district within the province. Yeah. Here we go. Okay, this shouldn't take too long. I will try and just keep it focused. Try not to go on no tangent at 4 o'clock in the freaking morning or whatever it is. Okay, I'm going to start from the beginning because the first thing that I'm going to point out to you, I'm just going to point out things to you that I'm aware of, or that I think about when I hear this information, okay? Like what's my immediate thought and response in regards to, you know, the validity of what this individual is trying to say here. Okay, so I guess I should turn it up just a little bit. See, the video itself isn't very long, so as long as I don't talk too much, it shouldn't take too long. Alright.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us at the annual budget lockup. I'm pleased to be presenting this 3-year plan in person today on the land of the Lekwungen-speaking.
Okay, first of all, this on the land of this native band and that native tribe and blah, all that didn't come in until they never used to do that in the Parliament buildings, right, in Victoria, British Columbia, Canada. That wasn't brought in until I think after 2015, when they came in with that framework, that accord that was an outsized source of something else that came in through the federal government, and then it was filtered out into the provinces, and I guess this was somehow implemented into it, because at the end of the day, from 2015 up until 2023, we now have a world organization that's trying to secure where it can dictate to every country that if there should be another pandemic, we'll just use that as an example, that they can order every citizen within those countries to start taking their inoculations, regardless of what those inoculations are, or even where they came from, or what's been happening with our current situation over the last 3 years. And the result of that, in terms of the high numbers of death and personal disabilities and injuries that have resulted from this foreign agenda. Okay? So what I'm trying to say is, when she starts acknowledging the native bands out here, that came in from an outside source via through the federal government umpteen years ago in the back with some accord or framework, the Sindel framework, something. I got them printed out here, people. What it does is it sets the stage so that when Agenda 30 gets more rooted into these smart cities and whatever else it is that they're trying to create in terms of carbon tax and, limiting your ability to travel and just the whole 9 yards. What they've done, or what they're trying to do, and I think they've done it already, but what they've done is they've put the responsibility on the bands, the native bands, through these contracts, right? Through this legislation, whatever it is, through these accords, frameworks, okay? Where it becomes the band's responsibility to start at some point in the future maintaining the districts, but maybe not necessarily have the resources, especially when the shit hits the fan. And if that should happen, then what happens is the UN and those other world organizations come in and take over whatever it was that the natives were trying to do, because clearly they couldn't keep up, they couldn't meet their expectations, they couldn't follow through on their responsibilities, and therefore, somebody else had to come in and take over. So even though the natives are being made to think that they're getting something out of it, in terms of, well, we can control Langley, we can control Surrey now, we can come in and take back what we want because we're the natives, the true owners of the land, blah, 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 blah. And for the average native, it sounds good, right? Because it's kind of like a reparation of sorts where, they feel that they might be self-empowered, but at the end of the day, it's just leading them to a path where eventually they're not going to be able to meet their expectations under whatever contract or legislation that they agreed to, and then that gives these world organizations the ability to come in and take over everything. And then the natives are going to lose it all, and they're going to be treated just like everybody else at the end of the day, because they couldn't follow through on their obligations to manage cities and a province. Okay. That's kind of what's going on here. Now, will that happen? Hard to say. But when you take it on a Canadian, like on a country level, with people doing the research and, and analyzing the legislation, analyzing these accords, analyzing these contracts, just looking outside the box in terms of the agenda to these world organizations, like, right, if they say that's it, every citizen of Canada has to take this shot from wherever because of whatever we said so, and therefore everybody better start lining up, because what? They're going to come in with their UN soldiers and haul my ass off to go shoot me up with something that I don't want? Well, everybody else is standing over there cowering, with Trudeau standing in there with his pink pants on, with his high heels, next to this other guy in Ukraine, saying, "Oh yeah, this is the new world way." Yeah, okay. So, take it with a grain of salt. That's the first thing I want to say about this. Okay? It's like theatric. It's like being in a theater. Right? You're around a bunch of actors that have a script to play, a role to play as they converse out the script that was written for them. Okay?
peoples, the Songhees and the Esquimalt Nation. And I'm honored to be on the territory, and I'm honored to present you with the details of BC Budget 2023. And I have to say how happy I am to see people here and downstairs. Even though I'm bringing a rural angle to the budget, I didn't expect to bring rural weather to Budget Day. So very happy everybody's here. We know that British Columbia is a great place to live. This is a beautiful, diverse province with strong, caring communities, but people are facing real challenges. And we know we are not alone. Global inflation is squeezing household budgets everywhere. It's harder to afford groceries or find essential medication for your kids.
It's hard to find essential medication for your kids. That's a whopper, people, for a provincial government representative to get up on frickin' national television, whether it's on YouTube or not, and say that. What does that say about our governments in general in regards to the federal government and the provincials and territorial governments? We can't include our municipalities into that fray because the municipalities, they're at the receiving end waiting for their paycheck from the government, to whom the government will sit up there and say, oh, no, we don't employ these people. No. But the thing is, the check doesn't get cut unless it comes from the provincial government. Okay? In terms of who pays the city. Either or, it's the provincial government and the federal government who are responsible to ensure that there's adequate medications for its population. Okay? Here they're focusing on kids. What? Are they pulling on the heartstrings? Is that what's happening here? Are they loosh harvesting? Getting parents afraid for their children? Because she's being very specific. She's not talking about adult medication. She's talking about children's medication, to which, on a government level, if a government can't provide the basics when it comes to basic medication for its population, then there's something wrong with the government, people, on both levels. Okay, this is being orchestrated. Canada is not a victim here. Okay? Canada is a mule. It's on a, leash, right? It's right. This individual and every other MLA in British Columbia, Canada, right along with every other MLA across Canada, should be advocating the federal government, with the federal government, with every MP advocating to ensure that medications are available to the Canadian people. Instead, she's loosh harvesting. She's playing on the emotions and on the fears of parents who are unable to protect their children because they're at the mercy of what? Dr. Fasinski, a Ukrainian, who says, no, I ain't giving you shit. Go take me to court. Or just come and say, I'm sorry, I can't give you the medication. Oh no, wait, I can write the script. But in the back of his mind, he knows you're not going to get the medication. But at the end of the day, he doesn't give a shit, people, because you want to know why? This representative here, to her government, pays Dr. Fasinski. So for them to say, we don't employ the doctor, when I come and say, yes, you do, fuck Fraser Health Authority. You see, I'm going on my tangent here, right? You're the one that cuts the check from the provincial government to Surrey Health Authority, right? Fraser Health Authority, okay? And then they pay Dr. Fasinski, but if the money didn't come from the government, none of those people in the health authority would get paid, period. Well, it's the same crap with this medication, people. They're normalizing it. right? Right? They're absolving themselves from having to take responsibility and push back on the federal government to make sure that the federal government does its job. Okay? But you see, we've got Trudeau now sending, I don't know, I think he sent some troops over to Ukraine and some equipment to go help his friend when they're not at the freaking discotheque. Okay?
Then there's the added pressure of economists predicting a global slowdown. The province can't control global forces.
You can't control medication coming into the country any more than you can control, you can't make it where children have adequate medication within the province and country. You're unable to do that because that's a global force. That's a global problem. I guess just like fentanyl. You can go get fentanyl anywhere you want, 5 minutes away from block to block to block to block to block to block to block, and they'll bring it right to your fucking door. Right? In terms of, those call them up and they'll deliver it to you guys, when they bootlegging booze and that kind of shit. If it's up in the interior, the fentanyl will travel its way to the interior and give it to the general population to clear out the freaking land so that the government can take it over. Okay? And then the government will say, well, there was nothing we could do about that because we can't stop the flow of fentanyl. You can't stop the flow of fentanyl, but you can't get the children medication. How does that work, people? Global forces?
But we can make choices that help protect British Columbians and build a stronger, more...
No, they're not protecting British Columbians because they can't even give kids fucking medication when they need it. They can't insure it. They don't even want to fight for it, people. They don't want to call in the freaking hounds and say, let's go after the federal government and make the government do its fucking job when it's on a federal level. Right? Trudeau should not be supporting some war overseas when we don't even have medications for our kids out here. And if doctors want to sit quiet on that crap because they don't want to rock the boat and lose their paychecks that come from the provincial government, this individual and her friends, and let kids, just slip through the cracks? Like me? Just let them slip through the cracks and then tell those parents, I'm sorry, if you want any information, take my ass to court? After the parents lose their kids because they couldn't get adequate medication because this individual is too busy blaming world politics? This is why I didn't want to do this. Okay? I don't want to drag this shit out, and I'm not even 1 minute into the bloody video. And my heart's already racing.
more secure future we all want. When times are tough, you need government in your corner. Budget 2023 reflects the improvements we need to see today and the promising future we need to see on the horizon for ourselves and for our families. This year's budget improves healthcare, builds more homes, helps people with increased costs, and ensures our communities are safe and healthy. Because we are strongest when everyone, rural and urban, shares in the benefits of a strong economy. Now, before we get to the fiscal plan,
a strong economy with no medication for the kids, not to mention the adults that need it, okay? I'm sure some will get it, but not everybody, right? I guess it really depends on where you fall on that economical, within that classism. Oh my. Oh, there goes my funky eyes. Okay, what are we looking at here? Can't see.
let's look at the updated forecasts for the current fiscal year. As we told you in the fall, we projected a $5.7 billion surplus at the end of the second quarter. Today, we are projecting a $3.6 billion surplus. The difference is we are putting the surplus to work for people now. We're immediately investing in helping people with cost of living challenges. This new spending includes another round of the BC Affordability Credit in April, and it helps more people make ends meet. Once again, approximately 85% of BC will receive the credit, and about half of those will get the full amount. And it's income tested, which means the lower your income, the higher your payment. The new spending also includes the Rental Protection Fund that was announced in January. The fund protects people from evictions and rent hikes while preserving rental buildings. And there is $2.7 billion.
Well, that remains to be seen. Okay? Because I'm facing eviction at some point in the future. Let's face it. So we'll see. Just like a whole lot of other people are facing eviction in this province. Through those backroom deals. And gang stalking techniques. That lead to people wanting to kill themselves because they can't cope with the stress that results from all that crap. As they face direct homelessness. Okay? That's the reality, people.
More spending to support British Columbians through supplementary estimates. The projected surplus will continue to change as final revenues and the resources are determined and as we continue putting resources to work for people. As always, we'll provide a full account of the province's financials for 22-23 this summer as part of public accounts. We know this year's surplus is unlikely to happen again, which is why we are tabling supplementary estimates along with this budget. This is an important step to secure more spending authority and get this surplus money to work for people now.
Let's see. What is this? Leveraging the one-time revenue improvements to advance key government, priorities. Initiatives are support health affordability, not root out pharmacare fraud. Okay? They don't want that to happen because, you know, like with Sierra and the booking of appointments for surgery, and then on the day of surgery throwing her clothes at her and telling her to get the hell out of the hospital as the doctor's going into another room calling somebody else Sierra Chorney. Yeah, we know how that is. They came in off the boat, they needed surgery, they weren't hooked up to pharmacare, so they used Sierra's number to do it, people. Okay? Something the government doesn't want to investigate, people. Anyway, let's just listen.
Because we know that supporting British Columbians will build a stronger province for us all. Support like the $1 billion Growing Communities Fund, which will go directly to growing communities right across the province. It will support the improvement of local roads and water facilities and build more community centres.
So that's all going to the municipal districts.
Pools, trails, and arenas.
Into our city lizard halls.
Infrastructure to connectivity to emergency preparedness. These investments will make a positive difference for people, businesses, and communities.
No, it will make it good for the city and their employees. Right.
It's been a difficult few years, but BC's economy has been resilient in the face of pandemic, geopolitical, and climate-related challenges. Despite it all, we have seen strong economic performance in areas such as our labor market and home building. But there are also areas where activity is...
Home building, because it's a means to launder money. Whether those buildings sit empty 2 years after they're completed, even though they're defective and they flood out the neighborhood with a drainage problem in their freaking basements, or whether they're just carrying on as business as usual and knocking off house after house after house, kicking out people after people after household after people, you know, in terms of, you know, families and individuals and pets and just the whole 9 yards, just so they can build another fucking building and launder more dirty money. Okay? That's the only reason, people.
Slowing. BC's labor market is strong, with the unemployment rate near historic lows at 4.4% in January 2023. But there are high job vacancies in some sectors like construction, accommodation, and food services. The increase in workers has not kept pace with the demand in these areas, and we've heard it firsthand from businesses. We're seeing people spend more on services like tourism and hospitality. Meanwhile, increased rates and prices are affecting consumer spending on goods.
Yes, everybody is lulled to sleep in British Columbia, Canada, completely oblivious to world politics and what's around them, and are in denial when it comes to future food shortages, okay? Seriously, I live in a bubble. I've been saying it for a while. It's like some sort of an oasis that sooner or later people are going to wake up from, and it's going to be a real rude awakening. Yeah, I think so.
Particularly big.
They can only prop up Trudeau for so long, people. Okay? In terms of, I don't know, normalizing a fake reality.
Big ticket items like vehicles. Nominal retail sales growth in BC has softened, rising by just 2.7% in 2022. On housing, construction activity continues to be strong, with the second highest number of housing starts on record last year at around 46,700 units. That's well above the 10-year history.
Yeah, but none of those units benefit families like mine. You see, that's the thing. If they're not being subsidized by federal, provincial, and municipal subsidies with the immigrant population, they're waiting for the few that don't get medically kidnapped within the healthcare system when it relates to the elderly and their retirement, so they can scoop up and buy little boxes, right, after they sell their houses, right, and then live there until eventually they just end up in the hospital and never get released, right? Or they just simply sit empty, people. They sit empty.
Historical average.
Because it's just laundering money.
At the same time, we've seen home sales fall significantly in response to increased interest rates. In 2022, MLS home sales decreased 35%, and activity was well below average in the second half of the year.
Home sales are down, but building is up.
The MLS average sale price has also softened, falling almost 18% from February 22 to January 23. As always, housing remains a priority for our government, and we continue to monitor these trends closely. High prices are affecting the cost of living for households. Inflation in BC reached 40-year high last May and declined to 6.2% in January.
Inflation reached a 40-year high? So, okay. I for some reason, 40% clicked. I'm like, 40%? But in a lot of ways, yeah.
We are seeing the worst effects in how much we are paying for food, shelter, and transportation. In response to rising inflation, central banks have raised interest rates faster than expected, affecting the cost of borrowing for people as well as the province. The latest update is that Bank of Canada signaled its intent to hold rates steady for now. Regarding trade, the value of goods exports was strong on an annual basis, with growth of almost 20% in
Well, they're trading with China. They ship everything to China, people. All right, because you know how it goes, right?
2022. However, the value of goods exports started to decline in the latter half of the year in response to lower commodity prices. Exports are down 25% since May. Meanwhile, service exports continue to recover as tourism picks up as people continue to resume travel. The economic outlook for most of BC's major trading partners, for example, the rest of Canada, US, China, Japan, has weakened. That's due to a number of...
She didn't want to come out and say China first. She said Canada, US, China.
Factors, including higher interest rates and uncertainty associated with the war.
They take our wheat. They take our uranium. They take our, the LNG gas, liquid gas. They take that. They take our lumber. What else do they take? They take everything, people. Okay? They've got something like 5,000 Chinese soldiers up in the interior doing Chinese exercises. It's been the talk of the province for quite a few years. Whether they're still there or not, I don't know. But they used to be there not too long ago. So, and that's not when they're transporting all this liquid gas and old growth forests and freaking uranium and our corn, our wheats, right, to China at the ports.
Ukraine. And while it may feel like the pandemic is over in some regions, it still remains a risk globally that could affect labor, trade, and supply chain.
Okay, well, that's up for debate because a whole lot of shit's going on in the United States where they're calling for the Nuremberg trial against certain individuals that need to go to jail for what's been done. Okay? To which there's that mirage, that bubble that I'm trapped in. Okay? Because it's not that this individual believes what she's saying, it's because the federal government told her to say it, people. And it's not like the federal government believes in what it's saying, it's because some foreign entity told the federal government to do it. Okay? That's what I mean. It's just one big theater.
So let's turn to the outlook for BC's economy.
And she's warning you. She's warning you. They've let the general population somewhat get back to a normal mindset, but she's reminding you that there's a problem with medication and it's out of Canada's hands, even though they're shipping everything off fucking China. We can ship off all this shit to China, but China can't send us medication? Why, people? Why? Right? If China can take our wheat, take our uranium, take our old growth forests, take our natural liquid gas, take whatever it is that they freaking want to take, why can't they make sure one what do you call that? Shipping container comes back full of medication so this individual can say that there's enough medication for the general population of British Columbia, Canada. They won't do that because that's fear-mongering. That's fear-mongering, and then she comes back in and reminds you that we're not out of some pandemic, even though we got a whole bunch of freaking other people over there, and we're talking thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of people over there that want to take the crooks to freaking jail, to court, and then put their asses in jail. Okay? Why doesn't she talk about that? She won't talk about that. She's preparing the public for the next lockdown. Okay? Because she's fear-mongering, reminding you that we're not out of it yet, in terms of whatever the agenda is here.
In Budget 2023, we are forecasting that BC's economic growth will slow to 0.4% in 2023. The slower near-term growth projection largely reflects the combined effects of elevated price pressures and tighter monetary policy working their way through the economy. This isn't unique to BC. We're expecting a similar slowing throughout Canada and the world. Looking beyond 23, economic activity in BC is expected to gradually recover. And you can see real GDP growth is forecast to rise in 2024, and then range between 2.2 and 2.4% annually.
Business as usual.
The ministry's forecast for BC is similar to the average outlook provided by the Economic Forecast Council, with prudence in the near term. So Budget 2023 builds today for a stronger tomorrow. These uncertain times require careful, thoughtful action. And the choices this budget makes address not only the uncertainty ahead of us, but also moves in long-standing priorities. Budget 2023 reflects the priorities we've heard from British Columbians. And in the face of challenges of global inflation, Budget 2023 continues to help people here at home with costs. Through the key investments I'm about to highlight, I'll show how Budget 2023 will strengthen and health and mental health care so people can find and stay connected to the care they need. We'll take bold action to make homes more affordable and attainable for people in BC. We'll ease the stress on household budgets and put money back in people's pockets to help with everyday costs. Increase services and support to foster safe and healthy communities, and set the groundwork for a strong, sustainable economic process through BC's greatest resource, people. We are all better off when a good life is in reach for everyone who calls BC home. And by helping people, families, businesses, and communities today, Budget 2023 builds a stronger, more secure future for everyone. Before I begin with our investments, I'd like to speak to our long-term fiscal sustainability as a province. This sustainability is essential. We're focused on finding a way back to balance, but not at the expense of British Columbians and the services we all rely on. This is why, once again, we present a plan with declining deficits, starting at $4.2 billion next year and declining to $3 billion by 25-26. We have focused on people since day one. And Budget 2023 expands on historic investments made since 2017 to help build a stronger, more secure BC for everyone. This includes more than $16 billion in new ministry operating funding and $10 billion more in capital funding. At the same time,
16, what did she say, million? 16 million for new ministry? She didn't mention the ministry, though. Right? So what ministry is she talking about? Because there's a whole bunch of them.
For everyone. This includes more than $16 billion in
16 billion. 16 billion.
New ministry operating fund.
In new ministry operating funds. So they're investing 16 billion into new ministry operating funds. But she's not being specific as to what ministry is going to receive that money. Or are they creating a new ministry? Adding on a new one? And what is it going to be called? And what's it for? Right? Because isn't that what the NDP is famous for? Being an over-bloated government in terms of, right? They want more workers, right? My cord is stuck here. So, okay, so anyway, let's just listen. Oh my God.
Funding and $10 billion more in capital funding.
And $10 billion more in capital funding. So where are they going to put all this capital money? Into schools? And still cater in a school meal? So they're going to put in $10 billion into capital, which is like school maintenance and hospital maintenance and that kind of thing. So they're going to invest into school maintenance, we'll just say, quote unquote, with this capital money, but they're not going to build functioning kitchens because they're comfortable with catering in their food. So nothing gets labeled as in terms of what's in the food when it comes to its ingredients.
At the same time, we remain prudent and significant contingencies allocated to specific areas to prepare for any unknown costs. This includes $7.5 billion for the shared recovery mandate,
$7.5 billion for the shared recovery mandate,
$1 billion for ongoing pandemic response and recovery,
$1 billion for ongoing pandemic response. Right? Enjoy your freedom now while you have it.
recovery measures, and $750 million over the next 2 years to support recovery from climate
$750 million
emergencies like the November 2021 flooding.
for
Our overall
emergencies.
debt for 22-23 is lower than what was projected this time last year because of our surplus. It's important to note that our debt is expected to increase, and that will finance the operating and capital investments we need now. Knowing that, our debt burden remains manageable. Other key metrics, the taxpayer debt to GDP ratio is expected to remain below 25% across the fiscal plan, lower than many other provinces. And taxpayer-supported debt at the end of the 3-year fiscal plan is forecast to be $99 billion. People want to know that strong health care will be there when they need it.
Yeah, because the government can throw out lawsuits at the drop of a pin. That's the only way they can remain strong.
At the same time, coming out of the pandemic, healthcare workers have never been under such great stress. These challenges are not unique to BC, which is why provinces have been working with Ottawa to help us deliver better care. But we're not waiting.
To help us deliver more better care, but sorry, we can't give you the medication that you need for your child because the federal government said it is what it is, right? Now, keep in mind, they're shipping everything to China.
We need care we can count on now. Budget 2023 takes the next step.
What does that care entail? Literally, if you can't get the medication, right? You're coming into contact with people that are shedding something with their aftermath of whatever. This is YouTube, people. Just stay focused, right?
Strengthen BC's healthcare system with $6.4 billion in new investments over the fiscal plan. This funding is dedicated to support the growing demand for health services as our population increases and ages. This includes an initial investment in the cancer plan Minister Dix recently announced, with more investments to come in future years.
That was already pre-planned a long time ago, people, okay? John Horgan, he already was going on about 50% of the population are going to come down with cancer. So therefore, we're going to invest all this money into this cancer clinic. No, it's because they're working on their CRISPR technology, people, and they need their facilities to follow through on their research. Their research studies. So this is just carrying on with that envelope, okay? Even though they can't provide you adequate medication outside of maybe for whatever it is that they're doing a research on, then you're going to get the medication, okay? Because you're signed up to that research study. You don't know you're signed up to it, but you are. You were signed up a long time ago to that research study. That was the whole point of the lockdowns, people, and the deception.
Years as the plan rolls out. Our healthcare system is only as strong as the people who keep it running. That is why...
Yeah, go take me to court. We know who keeps it running, and we know who pays to keep it running.
Budget 2020.
But when you got the government in the corner holding them to account for the corruption that they breed within their own workforce, that's when they say, oh, we're not responsible for that employee, even though we employ them, but we just won't acknowledge it. But we'll fit it into the budget.
3 delivers a new deal for family doctors and supports BC's healthcare workers.
There's a new deal for family doctors. That's right, people, because family doctors don't work for families. Family doctors work for the government. It's the government that cuts the check that goes to the health authority. And then in the health authority, if the doctor was a good little boy or a good little girl, will cut the check. But the health authority can't cut the check until the government fucking forwards it to them.
It will help us recruit, train, and retain more family doctors, nurses, and...
Now, what it's going to do is it's going to allow them to import an immigrant workforce that is unqualified. I wanted to say vindictive and spiteful because they come in somewhat prejudiced, they're bigots and they're prejudiced, and depending on who they're dealing with, right? If the patient looks like them, then they'll get a better service. But if the patient looks like me, then no, we don't get the service. We get, I don't know what the hell we get, people. At the end, though, this is the result of what we get, okay? And if it's not that, it's ripping out organs from our bodies and taking out our teeth, okay? Like, it doesn't take me long to get bitter with this shit, people. It's such a farce. Right?
other allied health professionals. Mental health is health, and we're making the largest investment in mental health and addiction services in BC's history. Combined with our capital investments, We will bring the new mental health spending to more than $1 billion, which includes the budget investing $867 million over 3 years. Our focus will be on expanding supports across the spectrum of care for people struggling with addiction. We'll do this by expanding the number of treatment and recovery beds, by creating new recovery communities to support those who have gone through treatment, and by delivering more Indigenous treatment centers and wraparound services to youth. This will all feed into our work to develop and implement a new model of seamless care, one that supports people through their entire recovery journey, from detox to treatment to aftercare. This includes new investments for the Road to Recovery Initiative in partnership with Providence Health and the Vancouver Coastal Health. The same goes for the Redfish Healing Centre in Coquitlam, a first of its kind in North America. At the centre, complex mental illnesses and addictions are treated simultaneously. With this year's budget, we will be expanding the Redfish model of care so more people have access to these services closer to home. And we're continuing to put funding aside to support our continued health response to COVID-19. With new Budget 2023 investments, health and...
Did you notice how she reinforced that? And we're going to continue our response to COVID-19. Okay? She's talking about addiction services, and then she brings in COVID-19. As if we're in the height of a pandemic, okay? In terms of when it all started, and the okie dokie that they were feeding us then, right? As they continue to live in that bubble and deny about what's being said about this pandemic outside of the bubble in other countries through legitimate studies and documentations and investigations and freedom of informations and just the whole 9 yards, right? Okay? And people are so gullible in British Columbia, Canada, because the majority of them are so dumb and want to remain ignorant to what's around them because, you know, they're trying to get that bag, right? You know, in terms of that Canadian dream. Yeah, Canadian dream. That's why they got to spend billions into recovery centers as they're plotting and scheming how they can convince people that they're dying from a virus. Yeah, okay.
Mental health annual funding has increased by nearly $10 billion since 2017. Total investments will grow to more than $30 billion a year by 25-26 and will support improved healthcare services for British Columbians. It's about taking action now to deliver better care for more people. We know that housing is top of mind for people throughout the province. An affordable, accessible home is part of what it means to build a good life in BC. For too long, the housing market worked well for investors, speculators, and banks, not for everyday people. After 5.5 years of work, we're starting to see results. 40,000 homes are built or underway.
Okay, so if they're building 40,000 homes or they're on their way, she said they've been built or they're on their way. She doesn't tell us how many have been built or how many are on their way. But that's only 40,000 people as they're bringing in tens of thousands. I'm talking tens of thousands. When they brought in the did they bring in the Syrians twice? I think the first batch was 10,000 at one time. Or was that the Afghanistans? Years and years and years and years ago. Or was it the Iranians? I don't know. All I know is they came in with 10,000 in one pop in Surrey within a year. Took up a lot of the housing out here, people. And now they're bringing in 10,000 Ukrainians. So it isn't necessarily quote-unquote race-specific. It's the fact that they're coming in with large numbers of immigrants, okay, that do not speak English for the majority of them, are completely dependent on the government to sustain them in every capacity, are willing to do anything and everything just to stay in Canada once they get here, right? as a replacement population for families like mine. So what if they're making 40,000? What? What's affordable? What do they consider affordable? For a 2-bedroom condo, $2,000 a month, that's affordable? What's your definition and as what's affordable, and what do you get with that affordability in terms of quality of living? Or is that even factored in anymore? Okay? Being that you've got a surplus of all these needy people coming into British Columbia, Canada, sucking up all the local resources, right? Plotting and scheming how to get rid of the people that were born or raised or grew up in this district, this like province, right, in terms of a provincial district, just that they can have what you have, because they don't want you to have it. They want to stay. $40,000 with the numbers of people coming into British Columbia, Canada through this migration, inflation, this replacement migration program that we're under, which is a direct attack against families like mine. It's a progression, and it doesn't end, and the government doesn't take no responsibility for the aftermath of it. The death, the injury, the harm, the mayhem. Because somehow Dr. Fasinski, he pays himself, right? He cuts his own paycheck, right? It's not the government who pays Dr. Fasinski, even though the guy's got no fucking balls and can't stand up and speak out against the government, because as soon as he speaks out against the government about anything, he gets fucking fired, people. And that's what your virus taught us. You know? Like, seriously, fork tongue. Fork fucking tongue. 40,000. Who cares? That's nothing. You gave it to the immigrants. You gave it to the Ukrainians. You gave it to the fucking Syrians. You gave it to the Afghanistans. You gave it to the fucking Muslims over there. The Iranians. All the ones that like to go running around doing illegal organ harvesting in their own damn countries, people. In freaking... What is it called? Freezers. They don't even have real operating rooms. And if they do, they're vicious about what they do. Because they don't regulate crime. Many of those countries. That's why they leave those countries. But they bring that crime here. So, your little affordable housing, she doesn't tell us what's affordable in terms of what's affordable, what do you get for it, and who's moving in. It means nothing.
And we're seeing record construction on new rental housing.
Where is this rental housing? That over there, sit empty, flood out the neighborhood, so it makes it easy for those guys to come and rip down more fucking houses and destroy everything around them and kill off the wildlife, kill off the fucking trees, right? You know what I'm saying? Right? And flood out even more houses, and so that what? What? How? Right. Mm-hmm. To build in more affordable housing. Who's moving in? Only certain kind of people can move in.
Budget 2023 includes a bold housing action plan with more than $4 billion in new operating and capital investments to build on the work done so far. Work like lifting strata restrictions, setting new housing targets for community.
Strata restrictions, yeah. Build these stack and pack buildings.
That need.
You have to remember, we got barrels of bug flour just waiting to be delivered, okay?
And creating a rental protection fund to preserve older rental units. The details of the plan will be released this spring. And it will take new steps to build and unlock more homes for middle-class families, for Indigenous peoples, and for renters and those with the greatest needs. We're also creating more student housing spaces throughout BC to help ease pressure on local markets and build on the thousands of student beds already open or underway. We're also increasing housing and services near public transit hubs around the province. This year's budget will fund more supportive housing and strengthen existing programs that help vulnerable people keep their homes. And we're adding hundreds more units of complex care housing. And we've done a lot of work already, and there is still a lot of work to do. Budget 2023 is investing in the delivery of homes for all kinds of British Columbians, because too many people are struggling to find a decent home, even if they have a good income. Not only are we investing in new housing, we're clearing the way for more housing with zoning changes and a faster permitting process. Since 2017, we have invested over 4 times the amount of annual operating spending on housing initiatives. And in Budget 2023, we have $1.9 billion budgeted for next year alone. On top of this, there is $800 million in capital spending planned for housing for next fiscal year.
I'm going to come back. The heat is on. It's blowing up in my face here. Okay, before I pick up with this, I'm going to talk about this housing situation here. And just thinking, right? I really want another coffee, but, you know, at some point here, I'm going to try and take my bad habits and replace them with some good habits, like honey and lemon. But anyway, besides that point, okay. So we're going to talk about the housing situation here, people, because this is a charade. This is a farage. This is a fraud. Okay. I don't remember when they came in with the 10,000 Syrians, but that was the first batch. I'd have to go back and look, okay, in my videos, right? Or just Google when the Syrians came. All I know is at that time, I went to the food bank a couple times, right? I don't know when it was, 16, 17, 2016, 17, 15, 18, I don't know. I just know that when I went to the food bank, people, when you got there, what you would find is a band of Syrian men, a whole group of them, going through the food bank. There were so many of them, people, that they were treating them in a different line. And they're because they're not being serviced fast enough, okay? That's the first thing. So anyway, it became, I guess, the municipal's responsibility to house them. 10,000 of them. All in like, poof, here. Just throw them in like chickens in a cage, right? You got a flock of chickens, just throw in a whole bunch more and they'll let them duke it out between themselves. All right. So what happened was, we know, they took single-family occupancy houses like mine. They broke them up into 2 with illegal suites, many of them, right? Took a seven-member family. This was, okay, this is what they did when they came with the first batch. Increased the rent to match the subsidies that are coming in, so the landlord was guaranteed the maximum dollar amount that they could get, knowing that they'd get it because the Syrian family is supported by the federal, provincial, and municipal government, right? As they put them on the upper half or lower half of these houses and then rent out the remaining upper half or lower half to somebody else, to which leads me to say a lot of those individuals are those UN soldiers that band together anywhere from 5 to 12 in a 2-bedroom or 1-bedroom basement suite, or maybe they might get lucky and get the upper suite. Doesn't matter. The point is you go down 1 block this way halfway through and you're going to find a group of 10 of them. Then you're going to go over there and you're going to see in the basement another group of 7 of them. Then you're going to go over there, and this is all in a 1 block radius, people. Oh, sorry. Over here, after they kicked out that woman and threw all her shit out in the bin, they moved in another batch of men, those UN soldiers, about 7 at a time, living in 1 2-bedroom half duplex that's being slated to be tore down. Okay? As they moved in a Syrian family, the second batch, because once they brought in the first 10,000, they've been bringing them in ever since. And that batch just came in, was told that they couldn't work, right? And even if it meant mowing grass for $50,
They weren't allowed because the federal government said so, right? They had to wait for the handout from the federal government as they took up housing and helped to overinflate the rent, because you know that landlord over there is maximizing on those federal and provincial and municipal dollars in terms of rent. So you've got that house over there with UN soldiers, that house over there with UN soldiers, that half duplex where somebody had their shit thrown out into a bin, now filled with UN soldiers, the house next to it filled with UN soldiers, the house next to it filled with UN soldiers. We're talking groups of men, groups of men, groups of men. You might get one or two women in there, but you're not going to find too many of them because that's not the agenda. That's why I call them UN soldiers, people. And then once you pass the building that sits dark in the dark for 2 years as it floods out the neighborhood, the next house over is the UN soldiers with their monster trucks, with bad attitudes, saying that they've got a permit to go around destroying other people's lives as they tear out more houses, and then what's remaining, gang stalk those families, if we're born here and we're vulnerable, to get us kicked out so they can move in their UN soldiers, because they need to house them, because the houses that they were living in are now gone, because that's not, right? You see how it goes here, people? As they bring in more immigrants to take up even more housing. You brought in 40,000, or you're bringing in, what, you brought in 20 and you're bringing in 20 more housing units. For who? Not for my family, not for anybody that lives here in Canada currently, right now, unless of course you just came in off the fucking boat and you're losing your house because the house is being torn down. They're going to house that Syrian family before they'd house my family, people. That's what's going on in British Columbia, Canada. And it's going on from district to district. They bring in these guys literally just to tear down shit. And then come in with their, well, we're hard workers, we're building a new building even though it's going to leak. Yeah, okay. As the Chinese are lurking around in the fucking background, acting like they don't got their hands in that muddied water, in that swamp. Because they're using the Punjabis and the Indians to do their dirty work for them. As they're making sure that the Indians and the Punjabis don't have medication for their kids. Go figure. Go figure. Okay? They'll take the uranium, they'll take the coal, they'll take the old growth forest, they'll take the liquid gas, they'll take whatever they can fucking take, these Chinese, the wheat, the corn, right? They'll take, and they'll import that into their countries, but they won't even send us one freaking container full of medication so their grunt slave workforce can have medication for their own. But you see, we're dealing with the UN soldiers. They don't have fucking kids. So who needs child medication? They don't. They don't. And if you're dealing with a rich Punjabi, well, they can just buy what they want because, chances are they're in with the criminals. So their kids aren't going to go without medication. And so what if they sacrifice a few of their own kind? Because in their own country, they got the attitude, well, if you're born below this level of income, you deserve to be in that caste system and clean my shit, bitch. You will never rise above or meet me eye to eye, because that's the way they think in their own countries, and then they come here and they bring that same ideology and they import it right into the community under people's fucking noses as they smile up in your face, pretending to be non-prejudice, non-bias, non-racist. And it's quite the opposite. $40,000 means nothing. That's for the next batch of Ukrainians. That's for the next batch of freaking UN soldiers. That's for the next batch of Syrians. Or whoever. And then they come in and they sprinkle a few Africans around. because Africans make good maids. Yeah. Yeah, we know how it works.
Our economy is attracting
And people like their bodies when it comes to illegal organ harvesting because of that melon.
talent from around the world, and we're looking ahead to another year of strong population growth.
Yeah, why? It's not because people are having kids out here. We're being murdered out here, people. Okay? It's because they're bringing in who knows what. Who knows what?
With a predicted 1 million job openings in the next decade, this is great news. The best we can make for our future is on the people of BC, and that's what we're going to do. Budget 2023 invests $480 million in our future-ready plan to grow the most inclusive and talent-driven workforce in Canada. The details of the plan are coming this spring, and it will take action to close the immediate and long-term skills and labor supply gaps.
Well, yeah, they're going to put some immigrant, can't speak English. I already seen it, people. I've already seen it in the fucking hospitals, for crying out loud. Okay, when they took Uncle John, like I see it all the freaking time because I'm always exposed to these people. Anyway, yeah, you know, they're going to put them in some little program, sort of teach them how to speak English, and then stuff them in a job. So literally, they'll do as they're told, and they're not even qualified to be there. Well, many of them are simply fucking actors and don't even know what they're doing.
The plan helps to ensure that people do not face barriers in building the skills they need to succeed today and in the years to come. We've heard from businesses across sectors that their biggest challenge right now is finding skilled workers. And our plan is to help employers across access the talent they need, including funding to assist small and medium-sized businesses, and help them...
Right, till the next pandemic comes in and everybody's got to close their doors, right? And start spending tens of thousands of dollars for fucking plexiglass. Okay, and make it so that their customers stand outside in the rain, in the cold, in the blaring heat, who knows what, so that the two customers can wander around in the store and decide what they want to buy. Yeah, okay, speak with fork fucking tongue. That's why people go off and just work in garages, people. Because they're tired of that bullshit fork tongue crap that ends up penalizing them for every penny that they make. So they end up working in a freaking deficit. Okay, in terms of that small business. Okay.
Find and implement technology and practical solutions to...
But if you're just feeding, namely, what is that called? UN soldiers that are just happy to have, I guess you could say, home-cooked meal. You know, where does it matter where it's being made? It doesn't.
the current labor market.
Not if the government makes it impossible to make it legally where it's affordable to make it. And a lot of these politicians, that's what they create with their politics and their code this and code that and code. In terms of like city codes and food safe and work safe and all this other crap. So people resort to, you know, being criminal mind and doing things in the back room, right? And sneaking around. Being all paranoid. But at the same time, they're decimating the neighborhoods, people. They're not doing it because they want to be productive members in society. They're doing it with an agenda to take over society and capitalize at every freaking corner that they can make money on, including off of dead bodies or injured children or whatever.
Market challenges.
Old people stealing their pension plans and locking them up into old folks' homes where they can never be let out. Right? And then soon they're behind plexiglass. And it's not long before they're dying en masse, suddenly, out of the blue, with some okie dokie freaking explanation. But nobody has the right to have an independent autopsy to verify what the government is feeding them. Like I said, bring in a universal school meal program in the province of British Columbia, Canada, with a cash infusion of $216 million. That's the cash infusion to bring in the bugs, people. It doesn't take 22 years to bring in a meal program or to expand on a meal program, unless, of course, there's an agenda behind it. And because nobody's asking what the ingredients are, because it's not their right, being that it's probably basically free, even if it's subsidized to some degree where you have to throw in $20 because you're on welfare, and right, because you know they're not just going to give it to you 100% free. We're going to want to recoup some of their freaking costs, right? Even if you pay the $20 every month to participate in a quote-unquote school meal program, they're not going to tell you what the ingredients are in that bread or pie pastry or whatever it is that they're feeding the kids. They're going to tell you it's not your right. Eat what you pay for. And you paid $20, so shut the F up. Okay? You don't like it, you can move. Right? And then they accuse you of not feeding your kids, and then they come in under a different ministry, right? Cause a bunch of fucking havoc, and then turn around and take your kids away from you. So they could prop up their friends through their foster care system. So that middle class can survive with that untaxable income, people. Okay? If you're a foster parent receiving income, and they touch base on this here, okay? I didn't get to the very end because whatever. But anyway, we'll get to the very end on this. But if you're a foster care parent in the province of British Columbia, Canada, and you're under that contract, where that's what you're considered to be, right? Whatever money these people make is tax-free. So if they're making $1,000 a month for an average child, but they've got a side gig where they're making $250,000 a year as a two-income household, but having the foster child is just a supplement to, right? And of course, for every child that's injured, you know, I think the maximum dollar amount for someone like Amari is over $3,000 a month. Right? In terms of foster care. So $3,000 a month for a child like Amari, and not having to pay not even 1 red cent on it when it comes to taxes, is the incentive right there to prop up that system for those that do that for money. Right? Okay, let's just, whatever. I can go on and on and on about this shit, man. All I know is we've got the UN soldiers over there, over there, over there. We've got the UN soldiers over there. We've got them over here. And we've got the women over there fucking feeding everybody as the rats are running around in the fucking food. Okay? As the government's saying, but don't worry, we've got another 20,000 buildings being built for affordable housing, even though we've got another freaking 100,000 immigrants coming into the province needing housing. Yeah, okay. Yeah, okay. Why don't you deal with one problem at a time, for crying out loud, and put the fucking brakes on these immigrants and look after the ones that are actually here right now, instead of stuffing them into half suites with the prospect of having to move. Oh, I know, but the government will set them up with buying a house because they're immigrants, and they'll bring in a program where they get the one-time homeowner grant, so they can solve that problem as they just replace it with another problem from a different country to keep that human trafficking going.
And prepare for a changing global economy. Budget 2023 also supports a clean economy and climate resiliency. When we think about tomorrow's economy, sustainability and innovation are top of mind. We are guided by our Clean BC Roadmap to 2030, a continent-leading plan to reduce emissions while creating family-supporting jobs and strong communities. Budget 2023 builds on our Clean BC commitments with new targeted improvements and investments in active transportation networks across the province. We're also investing in more emergency
management. Yeah, but you see, you have to remember, as this accord, this framework, whatever is going on with the natives, sooner or later the natives are going to have to take the responsibility of whatever it is that the government's trying to do here. okay, in terms of ensuring that there's, you know, road maintenance and this and that and everything else. It's like the natives have to become the overseers to whatever the government is doing, and then if the government can't do it and the natives can't do it, because it's the natives' responsibility to make sure that the government's doing it, because now it's the natives' land, quote unquote, per se, right? That's where the UN will come in and take over the natives and the government and will implement anything that they want to do on a world government agenda, right? Where Canada becomes obsolete as a country, and Canada as a whole falls under a global dictatorship that will exploit people.
Capacity for communities to better respond to fire, flood, or heat emergencies. And we are providing more resources to speed up and modernize the permitting process to unlock more economic potential throughout the province. We know BC is a wealth of economic opportunity when done sustainably and responsibly.
We've got people out here that are aware of what I'm talking about, and I don't even know the full logistics around it in terms of, I know in a general sense of what's happening, right? Between the federal, the provincial, municipal, the natives, that type of thing. But you know, they're wondering if and when the natives are going to come to their area and say, that's it, you have to move because we're taking over the land, even though you think you own it, because we've got this in development when it relates to, you know, infrastructure, for example, right? And then once the natives decide what that infrastructure is, that's where they go back to the government, in this situation with the NDP, and they request the funds to do that, or they have to find the funds themselves. I'm not sure. I just know that people are being set up for future failures, okay? Because they're being misled to believe one thing as something else is unfolding in the back room, right? And because most people don't do their research and really think about things and try and connect the dots, they're just going for that surface value, right?
And it's where we see the results of
in terms of, oh, well, I'm a native person. I come to somebody and I say, well, you're on my land. That house you live in belongs to me because that's on my land. And the person will be like, well, no, that's not true because, you know, I paid, and this is my house, I pay taxes, and, you know, I've been here how many years, and Native will say, well, no, that's not true because it doesn't matter what you think, because at the end of the day, it's written into the legislation within the Parliament building that's directly connected to the freaking federal government, that's directly connected to these world organizations that want to come in and start taking over the land. But before they can take over the land outright, they have to give the people, and in this case it's the native people, the opportunity to fall flat on their face so that the world organization has an excuse to take things over. And that's where the government's going to play dumb, and allow it to happen.
To reconciliation with Indigenous peoples. The future lies in a rights-based partnership approach to decisions respecting land, water, and resource stewardship. And that's our focus. That is why our budget invests $21 million to advance our work on old growth and forest stewardship with Indigenous communities who play a critical role.
$21 million for old growth isn't very much when most of those trees are being cut down and sent to China, okay?
In these temporary deferrals. BC's Climate Action Plan is a key part of Canada's plan, which in turn is part of a global solution to reduce emissions. Carbon pricing is an important part of our Clean BC roadmap. Budget 2023 outlines a path ahead through a Made in BC carbon output pricing system for industry. And in line with the federal government's requirement, a carbon tax that increases by $15 per tonne each year. until the price reaches $170 per ton in 2030. But ordinary British Columbians, already struggling with costs, can't bear this cost burden alone, which is why, as the price on pollution rises, so will the climate action tax credit. Budget 2023 will deliver more money to more households through an enhanced climate action tax credit. Where a family of 4 would have received a total of $500 last year, the same family will receive almost $900 starting in July. A significant majority of people are projected to receive more through the credit than they pay in increased carbon tax costs by 2030. I know some people are feeling particularly vulnerable right now. Vulnerable about making sure they can pay their rent or their mortgage, about going to the grocery store, about day-to-day expenses.
Okay, so we're being very specific below those within that classism, okay? You know, below a certain income level, okay? She's talking about those below a certain income level here, okay?
That have gone up with inflation. Premier David Eby directed all of us in Cabinet to have these people and pressures front and center in our minds as we work together across government to build Budget 2023. This budget provides new targeted supports for people hardest hit by increased costs. As mentioned, the Climate Action Tax Credit has been increased and is one of the ways we're helping people with the costs of daily life. In addition, we're also increasing the income ceiling so that more households can get the supports that they need. Our goal is to have 80% of BC households receiving some portion of the tax credit by 2030. And starting next year, renters in BC will be able to claim the new Renters Tax Credit. This income-tested Renters Tax Credit will give low and moderate renters back as much as $400 per year.
I doubt that would apply to people on social assistance. That would be the working poor.
And we know that 1/3.
And $400 out of a year is not very much money, people.
Of all British Columbians rent their homes. And
They want, when that woman that's moving to, you know, because the duplex is being demolished, she went and she looked at these suites over here with that empty building, and for $2,000, I think she said it was over $2,000 for a 1-bedroom suite, and they don't even have stoves in the suites at this point because they've been sitting empty for 2 years, people. And they want $2,000 for a 1-bedroom suite. And I'm sure they're not telling prospective tenants that the basement floods out. And when the big rains come, that's when they bring out the sump pumps and they pump it out into the freaking alley and start flooding out the neighborhood. Okay. That's your quality, affordable housing that nobody can afford.
we expect it will benefit more than 80% of renters' households. We will also permanently increase the BC family.
$400 will buy me a bag of wheat, a bag of chickpeas, a bag of northern great beans, great northern white beans, and some sprouting seeds. That's it. Now, mind you, that's 55 pounds per bag, but at the end of the day, that's all it buys, people.
Benefit. Starting in July, families with children will see an additional 10% on their monthly BC family benefit. Single parents will be able to count on that 10% boost and as much as $500 to top up their annual benefit amount. When you look across 18 years, this increase alone could provide a two-parent family with 2 children with an extra $4,500. For a single parent with 1 child, this increase will provide almost $12,000. Parents,
I don't know how that works, but
will have more support and flexibility to buy food or clothing, pay the bills, or even enroll your kids in extracurricular activities. Altogether, these 3 actions will give more than $3 billion in supported targets for people with low and moderate income. Addressing the cost of living doesn't mean just giving money back.
to which brings in the naysayers saying, oh, no, we got to balance the budget. Bring in legislation where it just cuts off people off of welfare illegally, right? And don't tell them why we're doing it, and don't let them know that we're doing it illegally, and then expect them to never fight back when they find out what actually really did happen. And pull that, well, it's a statute of limitation. You should have came after us on the day we kicked you out into the snow, Miss Torney. Yeah, okay. No, it took Uncle John being medically kidnapped for me to come into that legislation, taking the time to freaking read it, to find out what actually happened, what my government actually did through their public union sector employees. Okay, if they would never have taken Uncle John, I would never have found out. But I found the actual freaking legislation. Okay, and I found out who fought back against it and reversed that illegal legislation, to which the government refuses to acknowledge because it happened a long time ago, and I was too dumb and ignorant to take them to court then, as if I even knew what they were doing. Yeah, okay.
People.
See how corrupt they are, people? You think any of that's going to change for all these people caught up in this drama? Like I said, so what? You got 20,000 units already made full with immigrants, and you got another 20 more thousand coming in into the mix. Grand total 40,000 affordable housing units, to which is basically being filled up with 95% fucking immigrants if they're not sitting freaking empty.
It also means removing barriers and providing better access to the resources.
As they're building more buildings with the UN soldiers.
That people need. And when it comes to essentials,
as China's taking all our resources and not sending us back medications. But for whatever reason, the Punjabis seem to be okay with that. The Muslims seem to be okay with that. The freaking Catholics, the Eleanor Gildings are okay with that. Our own government is okay with that.
having full control over your reproductive rights is at the top of the list. Prescription birth control is a necessary health care, not a luxury. It's a vital resource for equity and equality. And I'm happy to announce that as of April 1st, British Columbia will become the first jurisdiction in Canada to fully cover prescription contraception. We know costs vary, but it really does add.
Are they trying to bring in mRNA birth control now? Sneak it in through the back door with free medication? They can give birth control free to everybody in the province, but they can't get medication brought into the province for the children, regardless of their ethnic heritage, or for anyone else for that matter, because it's not just children's medication that's in low supply. And what medications are we specifically talking about? Where that was one of the first things that came out of this individual's mouth. I'd like to know, where's the fucking list that we should be looking outside of British Columbia, Canada, to make sure that we have access to this medication, being that the government is too impotent to ensure that we have access to it, regardless of who we are. Okay? But you want to give away free birth control to everybody? What, is the insert going to be blank where nobody knows what the ingredients are? People better pay attention to this. It makes me think of that dream that I had with Shimei, with that glowing sanitary pad between her legs as she's standing by an office, window counter, ready to do something serious with her John Henry and hold that fucking whoever was behind that counter to account. And that sanitary pad was glowing blue on the outside of her pants, people. Next thing you know it, she's hanging upside down, hog-tied. Remember that dream? Right along that glass freaking cubicle thing, whatever. And I go and I have to take her down. And as I'm taking her down, she starts shaking. And then she's on the ground curled up. And I'm holding her as she's in a full-fledged freaking seizure. And I'm telling her I'm not going to abandon her and that we'll get through it together. And I woke up with her shaking me. Okay? And now they want to give out free fucking healthcare, birth control, but not make sure that children have medication? Yeah, okay. You have to ask yourself, where is this birth control coming from? And what's in it? I'd be very suspicious of that. You can go today and go get free birth control, right? But you can't go get medication for your kid, or for your grandchild, or for your niece or nephew. Right? In terms of children. Like I said, children are not the only ones that are coming into that issue. There's people out there with their adult medication that are starting to have a difficult time. They're just not talking about it yet.
That up. For someone who pays $25 a month, that's $300 in savings every year and can be as much as $10,000 in savings over their lifetime.
So what, does the government expect them to take birth control for their whole fucking life and never have a kid and be barren? Be those morphidites? Yep. That's the way I interpret it. I'm sorry, people. How can you dare? If you expect people to take birth control for their whole damn life and save themselves $10,000 while they do it, you might as well sterilize them and save yourself the $10,000. Because that's basically what you're saying.
To address other costs of living, we are expanding existing school food programs.
Oh, you don't want us, people that are born in this country, regardless of who we are, to have children, unless, of course, we get the green light to have them through our organized religion and, you know, because we're propped up with an X amount of income that puts us into a different caste system. Well, everybody else below is expected not to have freaking kids, okay? But yet, we'll bring in 7 at a pop from Syria in terms of 5 kids, 2 parents, not to mention the uncle and the aunt and their kids, and another 10,000 more that look and act and talk just like them to take over the fucking neighborhood. And then they can have kids, though, because it's within their Muslim religion. And they can even have more than one wife if they want that, and have even more fucking kids, as if they're going to take birth control when it's one big fucking free-for-all with those freebies with the freaking government, right? In terms of the more kids you have, the more money you make. But it's the Canadian-born people that have to make the sacrifice and save the government. What are they? Sorry, the government's paying $10,000 for a lifetime for a woman to be on birth control. Yeah, okay. Yeah, saving the woman's stress. Yeah, okay. That clearly tells you they don't want you to have kids because they're too busy bringing in immigrant kids with their immigrant parents. Yeah. When they're not bringing in the freaking UN soldiers.
For kids throughout BC. And we can make sure that no child has to learn on an empty stomach.
Okay, what
We're
happened
also
there?
helping students access really does add up.
Okay, my memory card was full. So anyway, I should be fine now. I should have enough room to finish this video. I'm almost done. So basically, what we've got going on here, people, is we got the government saying that they're supporting small business, all this other crap, which we know is a fat out freaking lie. Okay, when they're not supporting, if so-called supporting, when they're not supporting, you know, they're making them go bankrupt, right? So much so that we've got businesses being run out of freaking garage that are catering specifically to a population group that they themselves want things affordable, right? But yet the one that's providing the food service technically could put everybody at risk to food poisoning because the environment that it's being cooked in is unsafe to a large degree when it comes to cross-contaminating food pathogens, especially if you've got rodents running in and out of it. Well, everybody's walking around, you know, paranoid, acting like nothing's going on, just so that they can have a business. How is the government helping with that? They're not, people. If anything, with their policies, you need $10,000 worth of plexiglass because we have a pandemic all of a sudden, even though tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of people disagree with you, right? Just because 89 MLAs have to say it's true doesn't make it true when you've got 2 million saying no, it's not. And they've got evidence to back it up, right? And they've taken it one step further and they've taken it into courts to prove that what our governments are telling us is a lie. So in the meantime, these businesses can't afford to maintain their operating costs, never mind pay their employees, so they go underground, people. That's the first thing. But while they do that, they put people at risk to food poisoning, which could very well be diagnosed as a pandemic. To fudge the numbers, to push the envelope, to bring in those barrels of bug flour that will be designated to particular geographical areas where those people will be made basically to eat that, because that's the only thing that's going to be available to themselves and their families, right? The more poorer you are, the more at risk you'll be eating bug meal. And that's all manufactured poverty. That's poverty pimping. That's trafficking of human beings and keeping them locked in to that manufactured poverty where they have no choice. As the government's trying to say, we're helping them. But clearly when you look in the neighborhood, you can see that nobody's helping anybody except people helping themselves. Immigrants there, that Syrian family doesn't care if I get kicked out. They want me kicked out, people. They want me to lose everything, because then they can have their family member, if they're not already living here in Canada, in Surrey, British Columbia, Canada, to move into this house. Or they're going to want their family member from Syria to come over and live next door to them so they can be one big fucking happy family, okay?
And it will free up...
And it's not just the Syrians that think like that. As the Chinese are sending all the wheat to China, making backroom deals with the government to build empty buildings that they can eventually send in their bug flour. Whether it's being made up in a legitimate environment when it comes to catering and food into the school system for all those needy immigrant children, or needy poor Canadian children, or just the average middle income children. But you're not going to find too many middle income children eating a universal school meal program, especially if that middle class knows what's in the food. They might feed it to the foster child that they house, but they won't feed it to their own kids, people. Because they don't have to. They're getting paid by the government to look after the foster child, but the foster child would qualify for that school meal program. Because it's, written in.
officers to focus on stopping crime. Budget 2023 will also include 10 more Indigenous Justice Centres in partnership with the BC First Nations Justice Council, bringing the total network to 15. These centres provide culturally safe and welcoming places that provide legal help, early
touch base on this one, okay.
resolution programs, and support services for healing and wellness. Addressing the overrepresentation of Indigenous people in the justice system is a top priority.
You're right, because they book in people like Sierra to be lured to their death 4 days after they're released from isolation, telling them that they're never coming back, so that when they go home and say goodbye to their mom, they say, "Mom, I'm never coming back. You'll never see me again." 4 days later, she was dead, with that baby face cop protecting the door, so the body dude guy could get the snuff movie.
Both for our government and for the BC First Nations Justice.
That story will never change, people.
Council. Budget 2020.
But Sierra is black, so who needs justice for Sierra, right? It's the natives that are important here, not the black people, okay? Or the white people, or even some of the brown people. I do believe that the brown people, like the Punjabis or Hindus or whatever, I do believe some of their kind are being targeted just like Sierra was targeted. But the thing is, they don't fight back. They just accept it and are comfortable with sacrificing their kids for wealth.
23 also provides significant new funding.
So if it happens, it happens. So be it. Right? And chances are it happened to somebody below that caste system. So what does it matter? They were born for it. I've heard Punjabis say that to me about how they look at people that live below a certain income level and how we deserve to live like that for our whole fucking lives. Because we were born into it. Yeah, okay. That's why you murder your daughters and you build an army. Like the Chinese. Isn't that what they do? They murder their daughters, you know, to abortion and all that crap, just so they can build an army with little dicks.
Funding to support agreements under the 2022 Shared Recovery Mandate. This historic investment provides fair...
And then send them out into the world to demolish everything in their path and call it progress, so that that same army guy can put an order in for his chicken and have her shipped overseas and then stuffed into some building so he can call himself a family man. Yeah, okay. Because he worked hard for it, destroying other people's lives. Yeah, okay.
And reasonable increases to wages, including significant inflation protection to BC public sector workers. This will help to support and retain the people we all depend on, including those in healthcare and education, to improve the essential services that British Columbians rely on. Overall, the fiscal plan includes $15.1 billion for the estimated costs of the mandate. Capital spending over the three-year plan is increasing to $37.5 billion in budget 2023. We're delivering the schools, hospitals, transit, highways, and other infrastructure people rely on. With the largest infrastructure investment in BC's history, this is a place to be for good family-supporting jobs. This investment strengthens the economy, directly and indirectly creating approximately 125,000 jobs over the 3 years. And budget 2023 looks at all...
Assuming that everybody gets jabbed. Okay, people? Don't forget that clause. Right? And free birth control. Because the government doesn't want you having kids. Unless they say it's okay. Because then it gives a green light for people having kids. For them to continue to be targeted. In terms of, it doesn't matter if you're married or not. You can't afford it. You didn't work hard enough. You didn't earn it. And if you're a single parent, oh boy.
Capital investments through an environmental, social, and governance lens. This means being a leader on innovative mass timber construction, creating more childcare spaces, incorporating energy efficient and low carbon design, creating a safer and more resilient network of infrastructure, and creating more apprenticeship.
Creating a bubble, an illusion, a mirage.
and training opportunities in local communities, particularly.
Well, the world crumbles around them, but that's okay because they're just going to take in all the immigrants that had their world crumble around them in their own damn countries and then bring that trauma and dysfunction here.
For traditionally underrepresented people who want to build a career in the trades. Government continues to balance the near-term priorities with longer-term fiscal sustainability. And while there are risks of a global economic slowdown, we remain committed and on track with the fiscal...
There's a risk of World War III, people with nuclear weapons, let's be real about it, when we're not under attack with that terraforming, with all these, chemical spills being set on fire to create more dangerous chemicals that go up into our atmosphere and then come down in the rain, with spot checks here, spot checks there, as this continues on a weekly basis all across the world. In Mexico, they had 3 oil refineries catch on fire. In the United States, they just had a metal factory like 2 days ago or yesterday, 2 days ago. And this isn't including what happened in Idaho, okay, or Michigan, and Florida. But this other one that came in with this metal factory is one of the main metal factories for like distributing metals, more than one kind, to industries. Just went off and caught on fire and is completely destroyed. 2 days ago, people. Because they're terraforming not only the planet, but they're destroying our abilities to be able to feed ourselves and sustain life. Okay? So this isn't a global slowdown. This is a global attack. Right? And immigrants who run away from that problem within their own country, thinking it's going to be solved for them because the Canadian government will support them until they're dead, basically, because, many of them come here and then end up signing on to long-term disability because they're traumatized from where they came from, so they can't work. Why should they when they already know how to play the system, people? But it's fresh blood. That's all it is. Right? You can only take so many family members from a household before people like me really speak out and fight back. But I've been fighting back since the very beginning. This Syrian family, if they lose a family member, like the way I've lost family members, they'll just sit quiet on it and act like nothing bad in terms of a bad agenda, that they were targeted for that. They'll ignore it. They will just blame it on their dead child and say, well, they didn't listen to me. If they would have listened to me because Papa said so, because Papa's Muslim and my son went off and did something else and now he's dead, well, they'll accept it. And before they'd fight back, they'll just pretend it didn't happen, blame their kid for it, and then move on and hope that it won't happen to another child. But if it happens to another child, they'll still ignore that one because, that's only 2 out of 5, right? But if they go into the 3s and 4s and start losing all their kids, then maybe, just maybe, those immigrants might wake up and smell the coffee and realize that whatever my family went through, they were designated to go through it maybe in another 5 or 10 or 15 years from now, just like my family has gone through it. Okay? Like, they're completely oblivious. Unless, of course, they're the ones going around doing the targeting and the harvesting of body parts, selling the drugs in the community and that kind of crap, right? They're either going to be victims to it or they're going to be the perpetrators to it. God. This is why I don't like to do this shit.
Guardrails that have helped guide budget decisions making since Budget 2021. This includes the declining deficits.
Why doesn't she talk about the potential of World War III, being that she's in a position of leadership? Where are the shelters, the bug-out shelters? Where are the nuclear bug-out shelters in the event that we get a bomb blowing off and freaking just across the border over here and we need to bug out? They don't have any. Oh, maybe they do. But before they put people like my family in there, they'll just round up all the fucking immigrants and put them in there first because they're obligated, because the federal government said so. got to look after the immigrants first. And we're going to bring in some more, too, because that country just got bombed. Even though we're getting bombed, we're still bringing them in. Yeah, okay. You watch and see.
Higher levels of prudence
As the bug factory is flourishing and making mad profit.
and ensuring funding is
Being that nothing can grow around us, people, because of the terraforming. Yeah. But who needs meat when you have bodies, dead bodies, okay? When I went to go see Sierra's body after 19 days, okay, of them fucking me around, because I wanted to identify her, right? So I found a funeral home that allowed me to identify her as is after she had that illegal autopsy done on her. Okay. When I walked in, she was in a body bag, right? And I asked the funeral director to come in with me, right? And there was a pair of blue gloves. I could have put on those gloves, people, and I could have done whatever I wanted to do to Sierra's body for 20 minutes, because she says, you have 20 minutes to be with Sierra, however you want. And I said, well, I don't want to go in there by myself, because, I've never done it before, and just whatever. I said, can you please come? And we agreed that Tisha shouldn't come in because it might have been too traumatizing, and although Tisha probably should have came in, but she didn't. Either or, that woman came in with me, and, she handed me the gloves, and I said, well, no, that's okay. I said, can you put on the gloves, and I'll record. I want to record. And I didn't even stay the 20 minutes, people, because as soon as I walked in, I smelt, I don't know how to explain it other than sweet meat. Okay, if you work with meat, beef, pork, chicken, and I'm 60 years old. I've worked with a lot of meat, people, and with blood, okay? At 19 days, you know how they cure meat? Well, they bleed out a cow, and then they hang it upside down and they cure it. They let it age. That's what it's called, aging. They let it age before they can sell it to the public. I felt like that's how it would happen to Sierra. They aged her body for something else, people. Yeah. She didn't even look decomposed, really, in any kind of capacity. She wasn't bloated. I pointed out that there was no real discoloration. And of course, this woman pointed out to me that it was starting to form a little bit on her stomach area, right? And I asked her, well, why? Why did it take so long for that to occur? Right? Like, honestly, her body didn't even look like it was 19 days old dead. Okay? I sent that video to Truth for Reality. I told him if he ever wants to make another video, he can use part of that video. Right? He'd have to censor out her private areas. But outside of that, he could use that video to talk about these things that I talk about if he really wanted to, but I highly doubt that he would, because it's a sensitive subject. The point is I didn't feel that her body was safe, that it was prepped for something else. And that if we have cannibals in British Columbia, Canada, to which I'm pretty sure we do, Sierra would represent a hefty price on the black market for that human consumption. On the cheap. It didn't cost them anything outside of life. I don't talk about it, but, it's just... And then for the cops, now mind you, they had already done what they had done with the luring of her to that place, and protecting John Hart, and denying me access to identify her right then and there at that time, making it so I can't get independent autopsy, Just the whole 9 yards, okay? And then what I have on video with that body dude guy looking in the phone is he's coming out with a big grin on his face. I mean, come on. It's not that hard to figure out, people, what happened to my daughter. And if they're going to go as far as do all that shit, right? Everybody's so freaking money hungry and so demented with their satanic freaking rituals and all this other crap. Yeah, I could see them aging her body just for making a profit someplace else in terms of grinding her up and cooking her up in some fucking garage. And nobody would know the difference. They buy some spaghetti with some spaghetti sauce thinking it's fucking hamburger that they're eating, and in fact it's my daughter. Like, come on, think about it. Okay? Because she didn't smell like a decomposed body. She didn't, people. She didn't. She smelled like fucking meat. Sweet meat that was been aged, and all you had to do is wash off the blood. Okay? Because they had her kind of laying a little bit in blood. It was almost like they staged her to look that way. Whatever. 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 Why doesn't the government deal with that shit? They put her on that little 3 triangle freaking whatever it is that they got with their satanic symbolism and rituals. First she was in Surrey, then she was in Abbotsford, then she was in Coquitlam, then she went to freaking U.S. Minister. Yeah, okay, fucking triangle. We know how that works, don't we? Yeah. Yeah. Well, everybody's being rude to me. Yeah. As if they're the fucking victims. Yeah. Yeah.
Targeted toward the most urgent of issues, while keeping an eye on our debt and debt affordability. We have seen how this approach has worked to build a strong economic recovery in BC, and we will continue to support the province in tackling today's biggest challenges while balancing responsible fiscal management. As mentioned earlier, provincial debt is expected to increase to support the operating and capital needs of the province. Our taxpayer-supported debt-to-GDP ratio, which is measured as a percentage of our GDP,
to
remains
support all the immigrants, basically,
relatively low. And we expect it to grow to 23% by 25-26, which is lower than many other provinces. In the second chart, the cost of servicing our debt remains very low. Only 2.4 cents per dollar of the provincial revenue is going toward interest payments in 22-23. And if there's anything we have learned over the past few years, it's that going it alone won't work. We can only succeed if everyone is on the journey with us. We really are all in this together. The budget is our map, our compass, to guide us forward as one. And it makes us smart, strategic investments to help BC through the challenges of today. Budget 2023 puts more money in people's pockets, and it addresses the barriers that continue to cause pressure in people's lives. Budget 2023 improves health and mental health services, and it supports safe and healthy communities. Budget 2023 sets the stage to help us improve the housing markets and build a stronger, cleaner economy for the future. From new supports for families to help them get through the day-to-day, to building new homes, hospitals, and schools for our communities, to taking action to revitalize and refresh our healthcare system, and investing in skills and education to help fill the new jobs of tomorrow. Budget 2023 pays attention to today's very real challenges while planning for an even stronger future for our province. I want to thank you all for your participation today and look forward to your questions later on today. Thank you.
okay, so the question remains, what did they do with Sierra's body after they put her in that cement tomb with their goons? Because I don't believe it was left there. Nope, they came in to the underground tunnel and took it out and did something else with it. Because it was well aged for whatever it is that they're laundering on the black market when it comes to wholesome food. Okay? Or maybe she was prepped to be a robotoid. Right? It's hard to say what they're doing behind the scenes, people, but they're definitely doing something that's completely devilish. Yeah, global slowdown. We'll see how much it slows down. And then we'll see what happens with that slowdown.